In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 186 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is mindset. Our quote of the day comes to us from Andy Gilbert. It's not the method, it's the mindset. Today's episode is sponsored by the good people over at West Fair Communications, who publish the Westchester County Business Journal and the Fairfield County Business Journal. These newspapers do a wonderful job in covering all aspects of the business world within two of the most influential markets in the New York metropolitan area. You can also take advantage of their daily news feeds, which keep track on the companies and thought leaders in these important regions. For more information, take a look at www.westfaironline.com. Trust me, once you start reading, you won't quit. I'm excited to bring you today's episode as we welcome our second Olympian who happened to win both a silver and a bronze medal. I had the fortune of being introduced to Katherine Adamek by a former guest of ours. On today's episode, she shares a lot of great stuff as she has been really making interesting things happen in her post-speed skating career. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Katherine, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. So the first question I ask everybody is, are you ready to bring it today?
I'm ready to bring it every day. That's not a question.
All right. Well, that's a given then. So
Yeah.
As you know, the number one objective of our show is to both motivate and inspire listeners to never give up. I was curious if you had either a personal or professional experience where you could have given up or given in, but you didn't, and you kept on going.
Yeah, actually, well, so many times. First of all, I feel like that's happened so many times in my professional speed skating career, but just in my life, right? Like in my relationships and my attempts to be a small business owner. I feel like I'm faced with that issue in all walks of life. But the time that I'd like to share the most today was if at the 2018 Olympic trials, I had several moments where going into the Olympic trials, I'd had a fairly serious concussion about a year before, and I had post-concussive syndrome. So anytime someone has concussion symptoms for more than 3 months after a concussion, it changes into post-concussive syndrome. And the entire year leading up to the Olympics was this constant questioning and this constant doubt of like, I know that I can do it. I know I have what it takes, but I have this very real physical limitation that I can't push through right now. And I had a lot of moments throughout that year where I had to decide, like, if there's a pretty good chance that this isn't going to go the way that I want, how am I going to deal with that? And every single time I had the opportunity to quit, the answer always, deep in my heart, my intuition, the answer always was, this isn't about being perfect. This is about being the best you can be, the best possible, right? And that doesn't mean you have to win the race, but that does mean you have to give your maximum amount of effort. And so that threw with me to the trials. I had a great season leading up to that point. I competed at World Cups. I had a top 10 finish. I had a personal best in one of my races. So it was still a good season, but I did not make the Olympic team. And I have to be honest in that, as bad as that hurt, going through that amount of failure, it was actually the moment for some of the greatest personal growth in my life. And I never would have had the opportunity to learn from it if I'd given up too early.
I think it's interesting that you touch on that being your no quit moment. And I think sometimes people forget that it's during those challenging times and some of those losses per se, where you don't make a team or get that deal in business, but you grow. So I wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind if just telling us a little bit about your past life prior to the 2008 trials.
Yeah, so I grew up as a short track speed skater. I'm from Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, and I loved the sport since the day I was 5. I mean, I remember my first time out on the ice. I had switched over from figure skating, and so I was wearing like pink tights and a tutu. And I probably even had figure skates on, but the thing that all the coaches kept saying to me was, "You look like a figure skater. No, you look like a figure skater." And I remember at 5 years old thinking, "I'll show you. I'm going to be a speed skater." And that motivation really never left. I was so fortunate to find something that I absolutely loved to do at such a young age. And so I trained, I worked my butt off. My parents did absolutely everything in their power to help me get the coaching and the ice time and just the support that I needed. And eventually I got to go to Salt Lake City to train with the US Speed Skating national team. So that was in 2007. In 2010, I had the fantastic privilege of representing Team USA at the 2010 Olympics. And I got to walk away with a silver and a bronze medal. So that was kind of one of many highlights of my career, but that was not what I like to tell my athletes or my clients now, is that winning feels good, success feels good, but you don't learn from it. You learn through failure. And so after 2010, I had several hip and back injuries. I needed 3 surgeries and all kinds of just injections and physical therapy and rehab. And so I actually quit skating. I started coaching, but for 2018, for a lot of reasons that I can certainly tell you stories about, but for most of all, just I wasn't ready to be done yet. And it was keeping me from moving on with my life in a healthy way. And so I decided, win or fail, I need to go back and try to finish this sport on my own terms. And that's what led me into this journey going into the 2018 Olympic trials.
That's an amazing story. And I think it's important that you have to in certain instances, you need to close certain chapters or certain doors to get to the next step. I want to ask you a side note question that I don't know the answer to is, how fast do you get when you're going on the ice?
So ladies can get up to around 30 miles per hour. There are definitely men who get close up there to 35, but 28 to 30 is pretty consistent for the world's best women.
Wow. And when you got your concussion, was it from, I assume, a fall?
It was from a fall, but you know what? We weren't even going fast. And that's kind of one of the things that really always frustrated me was that so when you train for something, and it's the same in life, I think we forget to do this in life. So when you're training for a sport, you have these very specific moments that you choose to overreach. And you have to be smart about that, because if you overreach for too long, that turns into overtraining. So overreaching is how you test your boundaries and get better. Overtraining is how you overdo it and you burn out and you get tired. So I was coming out of a moment of overreaching, and that overreaching period had gone absolutely perfectly. And I was on kind of this planned recovery day. And it was supposed to be this super easy day where I wasn't going to lead a single set. I was only going to do half the laps, and I was just going to hang out and do technique. And it was kind of like my reward for having pushed so hard for so long. I got this one day that I could relax. And so so on that day, it was the second lap of the day, and I just put my foot down wrong, and I kicked a block, and I fell down at not a terribly fast speed, but actually the bouncing off the pads is what gave me my concussion. It was the whiplash of just the speed that my head bounced back. I didn't actually hit my head on anything. It was just the strain of my, I guess, the lack of strength of my neck.
Well, the way in which you describe it is it. I don't want to go speed skating now. I'll watch you from outside the ice.
Well, something actually I'm pretty proud of is that from that moment, it kind of became my mission to help my program fundraise for a new, like the highest technology set of pads you can buy right now. And it took us a long time and a lot of work, but we finally found a donor who chose to remain anonymous and bought us a brand new padding system. And now the Pettit National Ice Center now has the absolute highest level of pad safety that you can get without going to a boardless system. And so we skate on hockey rinks. So hockey rinks have boards. It's possible to buy padding so thick that you can take the boards out and you just have the walls of the ice rink be padding. We can't do that because in the Midwest, so much ice rink traffic is hockey. We can't take the boards out, but we have the absolute safest technology that you can use without removing boards. So, I mean, I always try to find a bit of a silver lining in everything. And so maybe I wasn't as safe as I could be on that day, but I'm super proud of my efforts to help future generations be the safest that they can be. Because speed skating really, just like life, I mean, you need to set these goals that are challenging but achievable and that require you to overreach, but also require you to be smart enough to plan in a couple rest days here and there so that you can avoid overtraining, and to know that their future generations will be able to set high goals and chase them in a safe and smart way. I'm proud of that, at least.
No, I think that's awesome how you said there, you always try to find the silver lining. So I want to change lanes for a minute, and I wanted to ask you, what does success look like to you?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I've experienced this a couple different ways throughout my career, but John Wooden has a quote that I think sums it up the best. And he has a lot of quotes I really love, but in this instance, he has a quote that says something along the lines of, if you do what you know you're supposed to do consistently and to the best of your ability, the results will shake out to about what they should be. And that doesn't mean what you want them to be. That means they'll shake out to about what they should be. And I feel like I can get a lot of success out of knowing that I put my best effort forth consistently with a good attitude every day, and that a great process begets great results. And on the day that you don't get the result that you're proud of, you can always maintain your pride in your effort. But I've been in a situation where I had Olympic medals, but I did not have a great process. I can tell you all kinds of stories about that, but I can look back and say I've had great performance, and the pride that I felt from that was fleeting because my process didn't make me proud of my effort. And then go back to 2018 and I didn't have the performance I wanted, but being forced to stay within my limits and do the best that I was capable of daily challenged me in such a way that with or without that performance that I was going for, I had so much pride in my effort. And so I really think that that's what success means to me, so much more than always, having this idea of perfect or of having the performance of your lifetime. Happiness and pride goes so much deeper than that.
No, I think that's a great definition. And I love that question because there is no right or wrong answer. If you had to define yourself, but you could only use one word, what would that word be?
Oh, wow. What a great question. One word. I'm going to go with weird. Because I'll tell you why. I have this quote that I love that says, you have to be odd to be number one. And when I was growing up, I did not always fit in. I was always just a little bit odd because I had these goals at age 16 that did not align with the goals of my friends or even my teammates. And I had to learn this feeling of, look, if you really want to do something special, you're not going to fit in all the time. And it's hard to learn how to be okay with that. But thankfully, just through great mentors, I learned how to be okay with that. And that's still something that I really embrace about myself, that I don't mind being odd in my pursuit of being number one.
No, I think that's great, and I'm glad that you touched on that. And I think we're almost having recorded our 200th episode, and I think you're the first person that's ever used the word weird, so I'm glad about that. So you talk. Well, hey, you never know, but I think it's important because to have those big, loftier goals, maybe of teammates or other people your age, you got to do things a little differently. So I think different and weird is a good thing.
Yeah, well, and I guess I could throw one other word out there if you don't mind, and I would choose the word student because I just value learning so much. And at some point, everyone is good. Everyone has all the physical, tangible skills, and it comes down to your ability to learn faster than your competitors. And so I love the idea of being a lifelong student.
No, I love that. And one of the things we often touch on is the concept of ABL, which stands for always be learning. And I think just like you said, not only your competition, but just in life in general, you should always be looking to grow and to better yourself. So you spoke before about process. I wanted to ask you if you have a morning or a daily ritual that you swear by.
I don't have a morning or daily ritual per se. A couple things that I know I need to do consistently to feel good, just to be happy. And so one of those is I have to hit the gym 4 days a week. It helps me feel better, and I have to take a moment every day to be mindful. And so even though in this perfect world I could wake up 20 minutes early every single day and devote 20 minutes to meditation, the reality is that I can't commit to that process daily, but I can find some way to slow down and be mindful every day. And that changes every day, but the act of finding mindfulness throughout my day, that never goes away.
Now, define mindfulness for a minute, if you wouldn't mind sharing that with us.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple different definitions out there, but my definition of it is basically being completely present in this moment in a way that allows you to connect fully with people around you. And the reason I say that is because as a coach now, I often find myself thinking over how to write the perfect training plan or how to have the perfect advice or whatever it is, like really just again that black and white side, that really tangible side of things. I strive to make it perfect, but then I realize over and over again that the biggest impact I can make for an athlete or for a client is to be amazingly present and connected with them. And they probably don't need me to be perfect in that moment. What they need a lot more of is someone who just hears them, and so that's maybe not a great simple definition of mindfulness, but that's at least the feeling that I'm going for when I'm putting it into practice.
Now, speaking of practice, you have obviously taken your career from on the ice to off the ice, and you're doing some coaching now. But before we went live, you were talking about one of the areas you focus on, which is mindset. I wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind just telling our listeners a little bit about your approach and why mindset you feel is so important, that it's kind of your niche in the coaching world.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my business now is called Your Mindset, and I focus on performance mindset coaching. And so when I'm helping an athlete or a client fix their mindset, the biggest things that I'm looking for, there are a couple tangible things like black and white thinking, or like anxiety is a very big real thing in the world right now. And so there are also tangible skills to help people deal with those issues that they're going through. But to go deeper than that, I really truly believe that having a great mindset, it does come back to process over performance. It does come back to effort over results, and helping people understand that the anxiety of trying to be perfect, that's what's keeping you from being truly connected to this process. And I love to tell some of my athletes that perfect isn't real. I have a golfer who told me one time he's only happy when he's perfect. And I thought, well, what's perfect? What does that mean? And he said, well, one of my idols has scored like 3 or 4 holes in ones in his career. And I said, well, how many shots do you think he's ever taken? And I think we decided he probably was taking like 2 million shots over his career. And so 3 to 4 hole in ones out of 2 million shots, that is so far from perfect. And I decided that perfect is a place that you can visit, but you can't live there. And I like to help people understand that, because I truly believe that it's the obsession with being perfect that keeps you from being the best you can be in each moment.
I love that you can visit perfect, but you can't live there.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that come from?
Yeah,
is that from the sports world, or kind of just how you were brought up, or what?
I had a yoga teacher when I was after one of my hip surgeries. Actually, after my 3rd hip surgery, I couldn't skate, so I did this, bucket list thing I'd always wanted to do, which was become a yoga teacher. And I took my yoga teacher training, and I had an incredible, empowering teacher he was teaching us some breath work one day, and so he was having us take a big inhale and hold it, and we were all commenting, all the students, of like how good it felt to really fill up your lungs and pull back your shoulders and stick your chest out, and how good that felt. And he kind of reminded us, well, remember, you have to exhale too. Like taking that big breath in and pulling back your shoulders, you can visit that place, but you'll literally hurt yourself if you try to live there. And I started noticing it pop up in so many things. And so I often reference to anxiety, because people have, in my experience, a fair bit of performance anxiety. And anxiety can be a really great thing to help you be on your toes and perform to the best of your ability that day. You should visit. But if you can't live there, it creates a horrible life experience where you never feel good enough and you're not happy. And so finding that line between, everything in life at certain times, it's a good thing. But it's when you try to live there that it starts to take over your life and become a bad thing.
No, I'm really glad you touched on that, because that's something that I actually talk with my clients about, whether it's individuals, teams, or corporations. Is perfection is something that you don't want to strive for. It's, as you said, it's impossible to be perfect all the time, but it's not impossible to give perfect effort. And that's something that I think we touch on often. It's controlling the controllables. You can control your effort. You can control your attitude. You can't always control the outcome, and you can't always control what someone else does, but you can always control what you do and what your output is as far as going for that. So I'm glad you touched on that. One of the areas we like to ask our guests is in the personal development space. And I was curious if you've read something recently, or if you're currently reading something that you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
Yeah. So I am currently reading The Mindful Athlete by George Mumford. And what he does an incredible job of is taking some of the most loved and most practiced mindfulness techniques and relating them over to sport. And I shouldn't even say sport, because to me, life is a sport, right? It's relating those mindful habits into whatever craft you are currently mastering, whether that's short track speed skating or business ownership or being present with your family, whatever that is. And so he does a great job kind of taking that out of the Zen Buddhism world and putting it into everyday life. And then I have to give another one, because probably my favorite book to recommend is The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And what I love about his book is that he really defines some of the simplest actions you can take to have the best life experience possible. And he totally takes it away from this performance over process type of thinking and turns it into, these are the four simplest ways that you can have the best stinking process daily. And they're hard. The first one is to be impeccable with your word, which means not only no gossip about others, but no negative internal self-talk about yourself. And I find that to be way harder. Like, cutting gossip out of your life is one thing, but cutting mean or untrue thoughts about yourself out of your life, that is a constant daily practice. But it can really change your life. That one agreement to make can really change your life. And he has four of them. So his is probably my all-time favorite book to reference.
No, it's a great book, and I love that you referenced the self-talk, because I think people often refer to it as affirmations or different things, but the reality is you can control what's on your television. You can turn it off. You can control if you go on social media or not, if you open up an email or if you have a conversation, but we all can't control those initial thoughts that go into our mind. But what we can do is we can kind of try to change the channel, and being a unbelievably successful athlete, I'm sure you've touched on that in your own personal career, and I'm sure you're obviously touching on that now in your coaching world as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I just recently got to hear a sports psychologist named Sindra Kamphoff speak at a coaching conference, and she shared an idea about self-talk that I'd actually never heard before. And she called self-talk or negative self-talk automatic negative thoughts, which stands for ants. And she made that very tangible, because ants are something that happen to us all the time, these automatic negative thoughts, but you can crush them. But you have to recognize that they're there first, right? You have to notice when a negative thought comes in. And instead of thinking to yourself, oh yeah, that's true about me, you have to recognize, oh, that was an automatic negative thought. Let me just squash that and move right on. And in the same way, you can hop online and say, yeah, social media is not really serving me right now. Let me turn it off. it's a lot harder to notice when you have a thought pop in that's not serving you right now, and then make the conscious effort to turn it off.
That's great advice. I had not heard that saying before, but I think it makes so much sense. So I wanted to ask you a different question and change lanes here for a minute. If you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
I would have dinner with my grandma Fern because so many reasons, but the biggest one is just because genetically I'm so much like her, and I did get to know her. She didn't pass away until I was in my low 20s. So I did know her. I had a great relationship with her, but I've also always felt very connected with her because I think everybody can probably relate to this. Someone might say like, "Oh, you're just like your great grandma," or "You have your uncle's nose," or something like that. And it's always been very intriguing to me that from on a like a molecular level, whatever she had, she passed it down to me, and I'm very grateful for that. And I also, this is kind of a personal story, but actually when she was sick and she was passing away, I had my first national coaching event as a coach, and I made a terrible, terrible choice to not go see her immediately, to try to be a great coach that weekend instead of a great granddaughter. And I messed that up. And I'd like to tell her so. Ooh, I'm sure you don't get emotional reactions to that question very often, but I'm just being honest, right? Like, I think that there's so much that was left unsaid that I wish I had the chance to go back and undo.
Well, I appreciate you being vulnerable and honest with us, and I think that's sounds like something that obviously it's tough, but I think we can't go back. But we can all do is move forward. And like you said, with some of your thoughts, I'm sure you'll find your own way to pay it forward, moving forward. So, wanted to ask you an interesting question: is there anybody famous that you look up to and you admire? And I was curious, if so, why?
Anyone famous? You know what? I look up to Russell Brand, actually, because I'm in love with his Instagram because he constantly preaches some of the same. He preaches what I preach, but in so much of a more effective way, just about process over performance and being your true self in the best way that you can be. And it's really incredible for me to hear someone who has it all from an outsider's perspective, but then talk about how it's the simple things like being present with people or listening to your intuition. It's those simple things that really bring us happiness.
No, it's an interesting question. And the reason I ask that is in today's day and age with social media and some of those other tools, you have the ability to see people in a different way. And I like that question because you get answers like that. And I had not known, and I do not follow Russell Brand, so maybe I'll go ahead and follow him now.
Yeah, no, he's good. And I just kind of to go back to what you said earlier about you can make this choice about the internet, the websites you search, the TV you watch, and the social media you're on. And I fully agree with that. And I think, social media and technology are a super real thing. They are part of the world that we live in, but you can choose to fill your social media and you can fill your screen time with things that actually empower you to learn or to be a better person. And so I often try to find people on social media that aren't just posting pictures of things and places, but are actually challenging me to grow in the way that I think. And so he's someone who I think has done that better than almost anyone else that I follow on social media.
No, that's awesome. And like I said, I appreciate you sharing that with us. So wanted to ask you, what's the best way for our listeners either to connect, follow you, or to see some of the interesting things you're doing in your personal coaching world now?
Well, probably the best way would be through my website, which is fixyourmindset.com. And so on my website, I've got information about one-on-one coaching and public speaking, but I also am fairly active on social media. So on Instagram, I'm at Kat Adamek, and on Facebook, I'm at Katherine Adamek. And so those are probably the best ways. I'm always trying to update like my blogs, my resources, my social media posts, just because, like I said, I want to help people pursue betterment daily. And I like to be a resource for that.
No, that's awesome. And then before we let you go, I wanted to ask if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners.
I guess I would just have to go back to one of those earlier points, is to remember that perfect isn't real, and to strive for betterment daily is enough. And I'll share a story really quick before we go. I've got a hockey team that's going to state in a couple weeks from now. And several weeks ago, I told them, okay, we've got 11 weeks left until state. What has to be done between now and then to have the best performance possible? And the general consensus was, well, we just have to be perfect. Every day we have to do everything perfectly. And I kind of challenged them and I said, well, wait a minute. What if we go the other way here? What if you don't worry about being perfect, but every single day you try to just do one thing better? Do you think that would be enough? And they all kind of looked around and you could kind of see the stress and melting away, that they realized, oh, I don't have to be perfect. I just have to constantly strive to be better. And we all agreed that would be enough. And so that's kind of the idea that I'd leave your listeners with.
No, I think that's great advice. And I think too many times we all chase that victory or being perfect as opposed to going for your best. And as I said before, I look at it as giving your perfect effort. And it's something that we all can control, and you can control those controllables. So listen, Katherine, I truly, truly appreciate you spending some time with us, and I hope we can continue. And thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely, Chris. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to episode number 186. Although Katherine didn't end up making the Olympic team in 2018, she gave it her all and will never wonder what if. I had a great time speaking with Katherine today, and I absolutely loved her perspective on perfection. I think we should all strive to give our absolute best and to aim for perfect effort, but not perfection. Katherine also touched upon the process and how and why it's so important to focus on having the right mindset. Katherine said one thing that I'm sure resonates with our no-quit tribe. She mentioned that both winning and success feels good, but you don't learn from it. You learn through failure. Where do you stand in regard to perfection and failure? Do you focus on being absolutely perfect and achieving that perfect outcome? Or instead, do you concentrate on giving your perfect effort? When you don't succeed with a goal or an objective, do you look at yourself or the outcome as failing? Or instead, do you look to learn, grow, and get better? I challenge you today, don't aim, strive, or expect 100% perfection. Instead, aim to give your perfect effort and always look to improve. As you go for your greatness today, I would like to leave you with a quote from Nelson Mandela. I never lose, I either win or learn. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.